All right, we're back on the death lineup. We haven't been back since game 2. So games 3 and 4, the Warriors win, and now we're back. I don't know if that's bad luck or not, because without us, they did fairly well, but they were also at home. So, Bri, we were at Chase, though we did not go in the stadium because tickets were still $450 after the game had started, but we were there to support. We're not in this picture in my background here, but it was sort of like that to watch the Warriors and Kings.
How did they get to have chairs?
I know. We didn't get to have any chairs whatsoever to stand up the whole time. But what was your takeaway? Actually, not even your takeaway, but how are you feeling after 2-2? Because you even mentioned this after the game was over. This is what they do all year long is they lose on the road and they win at home and they make you feel like they figured it out. And then they go back on the road and they lose basketball games again.
They make you feel stupid, honestly, because here I am after game 2 overreacting as I've done before on this podcast. But I'm like, man, like, is this it? That's how I felt in the regular season when they go on these losing streaks on the road. It's like, oh, you can't beat Orlando, you can't beat Detroit, and you can't beat Charlotte on the road. Like, is this it? And then they go home and they win against all these good teams. It's kind of been the theme all season. It's the thing we bring up every single podcast. But I will say that I have overreacted a lot on this podcast. I think last year, I can't help it, but last year during the finals, I think they were down 2-1, and Draymond had not yet had a good game. And I was like, what's this guy's future on this team? I don't know. And then he was like one of the main reasons why we ended up winning that whole thing. So, kind of how I felt with this one. Go down 2-0, like, is this over? And then we go now it's 2-2. We're going back to Sac, and now I'm like, oh my god, are we gonna win the finals?
Well, I feel like we kind of did we write Klay Thompson's ticket out of town after game 2? I kind of feel like we were just we were Klay. You might not be the player that you once were, and we were like, I don't know if he can play this series. And then game 3, he didn't shoot. No, which was it game 3? One of the games he didn't shoot very well, but he played pretty good defense. And then game 4, he was, he made a couple of turnovers, but ultimately he was, he's really solid. So
I think we were more killing his defense. We were more killing his defense. And honestly, I don't even think that was the wrong approach. Like that first game when Fox just got him good, like that was like, oh man. And we said that. But yeah, no, I think even plus minus have been saying that like he's been staying in front of guys, which isn't something I've been totally keeping an eye on because I have this just like from games 1 and 2, I'm like, oh, he's just gonna get cooked.
Yeah.
But I guess he must have, turned it around. And if plus minus is saying it, then I'm sure he's playing well. So I think we're just jinxing these guys in a good way.
So we're not going to give out any butt cheeks awards here today because we're not actually recapping the game. But game 3 was they were ahead pretty much the whole way, and they were very comfortable in that game. Game 4 was a little different in that they withstood Sacramento's barrage, and they made a run in the second quarter to get it closer. And then in third quarter, they actually played really well. And I wrote a tweet. It was something like the Warriors were up 7, and within 3 minutes, they gave up the lead. And then 27 seconds later, they were up by 4 again. Like that was kind of the story of the game, was just the runs and the runs and the runs. But there were some moments for both teams where clutch play wasn't really happening, especially for Steve Kerr, who wanted a review on a play that Draymond, with his naked eye, said, no, we're good. And then he still went for it. So they ran out of timeouts near there at the end. And I guess Steph didn't know. And if the Warriors lose that game, that's kind of like a Chris Webber moment for Steph. And I wonder if he even thought about it that way. Chris Webber's moment is a little different in that it was in the NCAA championship game. And Chris never went back to a championship in the NBA. So he didn't really get to redeem himself in the NBA. So just followed him for his entire career. Steph already has 4 titles, but it would be a big time error, especially for the Steph naysayers, right? If last year was all about legacy and he was to call that timeout and they lose the game and they go down 3-1 and lose this series, that would have been a pretty big black eye for his year this year, I think.
I feel like it's a miss that Chris Webber wasn't on the call that game. That would have been great. Um,
So bad for C-Web
that
because
would,
he's
that would be the butt cheek moment. That would be the butt cheek award right there.
yeah.
It still should be that, even though they won the game, because
Well, I mean, Kerr and Steph on the Warriors end, and then on the Kings end, there's a moment in the fourth where
Harris Barnes.
the Kings get a long rebound, and it bounces to Harrison, and instead of pulling the ball out and giving it to Fox, it was just crazy good in that game. He shoots a
He had three
three-pointer
butt
with
cheek. He had three butt cheek moment in the last like 30 seconds of that game.
yeah,
That play you're talking about where he
yeah,
hucks up a three with time left in the shot clock.
yeah.
Obviously the game winner that he missed, and he tried to test Draymond at the rim, I think, or Looney or Draymond or one of the two, and it was just like he was just having butt cheek moment after butt cheek moment, and we were just sitting there like we've seen this before.
And that's what Draymond said to Steph.
Draymond said, yeah.
Which was I'm sure for Harrison, not the greatest thing, but Draymond specifically, I'm sure that was how they sort of talked themselves into the win, knowing that they didn't play perfect basketball down the stretch. It's like, oh, we made the right choice to get De'Aaron to give up the basketball to Harrison because we are way more comfortable with Harrison taking that shot. So they're up or they're tied 2-2. We go into game 5, and there's an interesting piece of news that comes out of that game, which we did not see in real time, and that is Fox hurting his finger. And originally, Shams said he was going to be doubtful, and I think all of us were like, yeah, we'll see about that. And today he did say there's no ifs, ands, or buts. He's playing. So he has a fractured finger. He says it's really about the pad on the finger and getting used to the pad. And he's going to play. He's going to give it a shot, and he's going to go for it. I fully expected him to. I didn't think he was going to do anything but try and play in this game.
Yeah. He's been a dog all series. He's got like that fear factor in him where when he has the ball, I'm like, oh, like I don't feel comfortable as a Warriors fan right now with the ball in his hands. But yeah, I think I was listening to a podcast today, and like only one player has, played with this kind of injury, and it was Kobe in 2010 against the Boston Celtics in the finals. And he had a terrible shooting game in game 7 is what Sam Amick was saying.
A Ron Artest game.
And so, I mean, De'Aaron, though, like he could shoot threes, but it's not like his game is, three ball. It is that floater stuff that we always talk about that kind of looks like a jump shot, but he's leaning. So I'm just wondering how much that finger, with Kobe, he's a 3-level scorer. He's going every single spot on the court. He's taking a shot. So I am wondering how, very two different players, and Kobe and De'Aaron, of course. So I'm wondering how, that injury might impact him. I'm sure it's not going to be fun to play with. And like we've said, Draymond might, interlock fingers contesting a jump shot with him.
Yeah, if I was De'Aaron, I would not stand with the basketball and hold it because people are going to be trying to slap that ball out of his hands. What did you think about? I know it's a different injury, but also a hand injury. How do you think Ja played with his hand messed up?
He played really well in game 3. Are you talking about this year, like where he just got
these last 2 games that he's
these last 2 games? Yeah, I don't know if you saw game 3. He scored like 20-something points in a row for his team to almost bring them back. I think they still lost by 10, but in the fourth quarter, he had like a 23-0 run, not 23-point run to himself, where it was like 6 threes were involved. Like he went crazy. Game 4 definitely a little more muted in terms of not that performance, of course, but a couple charges LeBron took that I think should have been blocks that have him flying in the air, look like he's about to break the hand again or whatever the hell is about to happen.
The slide under for LeBron.
That's I hate that call. Different injuries, I guess. But yeah, Ja had a surprisingly good game 3 for what I thought was going to kick him out for the rest of the series.
I think that, the thing with Fox is, in the playoffs, you don't really look towards tomorrow. You only play for today. But that's an injury that could probably get worse the longer that he plays with it.
Totally.
And luckily for him, though, he's not really he's not reckless like Ja is. Like Ja attacks the basket so hard that he falls really hard. And De'Aaron doesn't really fall that hard. He doesn't really fall. Like, a lot of his stuff is, in the key. He's not.
Controlled.
Yeah, he's very controlled. He's not, trying to get foul calls and hitting the ground all that much. Like a Jordan Poole or like a Morant. So I think in that sense, he's probably okay. But the touch on the shooting. Now he's a pro. He's a great NBA player. He's played with injuries before. But if he's 5% worse, that's really good for the Warriors.
Yep.
But you never know what happens with other guys, right? Like this NBA playoffs. If there's one thing that is apparent, it's that a lot of the superstars are hurt and they're getting hurt. And I don't know if it's because they're playing harder than they did during the regular season, or you seeing some of these big guys just hit the floor so hard. Maybe it is better for some of these smaller guys because they don't have that much weight on them to hit the floor as hard, like a Giannis or like an Embiid. But yeah, the injury bug for the playoffs has just been bad. This is the only bad thing about the playoffs is just these injuries because the games have been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the larger issue with that is the game is way more sped up these days. So like when the pace is going up, I think that just like invites more potential injury when you're just playing at such a fast level. And then yeah, another topic for another episode. But yeah, I think the games need to go down from 82 to like 65. And obviously, if that's negotiated in a CBA, like if the owners are giving up 12 regular season games, which is probably netting them millions of dollars, they're probably saying, all right, well then we want the hard cap, and that's gonna just, I don't know what the hell is gonna happen at that point. But that's what I think it is, honestly, with the whole injury stuff. A lot of non-contact injuries these days too. Lots of I think the pace plays into a big part of that. But yeah, where were we next?
No, we were just talking about the injuries, but we'll move on here in a second. But the last thing on Fox, if Fox is 5% worse, he's probably not going to be better, but he could be. He might just be a freak, and he might just be exactly what it is. If he's the same guy, the Kings, you might have to favor the Kings by a point or two on Wednesday.
Yeah.
But
Actually, what I was thinking of, I meant to say that in my little spiel right there. But you know how like when Draymond got suspended, the Warriors took that as like okay, we got to try harder. Our guys out, like we're gonna give them business in Game 3. I'm wondering if like similar thing with De'Aaron, where it's like, look, guys, like I shouldn't be playing, but I'm gonna play. Like, and that invites more. They're like, oh yeah, our guy's gonna do it for us, so we gotta really step up to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, that if that's I think that could be a thing because finally, Keegan Murray, not good for the Warriors, but for Kings fans, like Keegan Murray had a really good Game 4, and you'd almost not necessarily that he'd replicate that performance because that was like an all-star level performance. It felt like from Keegan, but or a near all-star level performance. But he's going to a home crowd who's not hostile to him, so like you'd think that he's just at least gonna not be as bad as he was in games 1 through 3. So yeah,
I think I'd still live with him taking jumpers though over Fox shoot. Like it's kind of weird because you watch the game and you're like, what's the one thing that the Warriors can't stop? Well, they can't stop Fox going left and getting to his spot and throwing a floater or throwing a little mid-range. And then when they do try and cut it off, he's shot the 3 ball fairly well. I would still just be like, I'll take it. Just swing it to Keegan. Like if he makes 40% of his threes, I'm fine because Fox is making 65% of his twos and he's shooting them at a higher rate. So, it's kind of a pick your poison thing, but I'm sure for the Kings, they would rather him make shots than miss shots because then it does take some pressure off of Fox. Same with Monk. Monk is kind of up and down. Like he's had some great games. Then he's had some games where you're like, is he even playing? Like I think Game 3, I was like, is this dude even playing? Because he was killing the Warriors. But so you'd probably if you're the Kings, Mike Brown, I'm sure would like all of his guys to shoot it with more confidence. But to me, I'm just like, if that means Keegan's going to take 5 more shots and that takes 5 shots away from Fox, I think I'm okay with that. Like you just sort of deal with it. I mean, we're confident with Harrison Barnes taking those shots, right? Even though, he has had a couple of good games in the series, but still you're just not, it doesn't worry you like when Fox shoots it.
Yeah, I feel like Mike Brown is in a pretty tough dilemma right now from a coaching perspective, because that Kings lineup, that starting lineup, I think allotted the most minutes played together for that regular season, with like the best net rating maybe as a 5-man lineup, because there was never really any King that was hurt for that long. Like, I can't think of a Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes injury, and I could think of a couple games that De'Aaron Fox sat out, a couple games that Sabonis sat out. So they just played all these minutes together. They probably have the highest minute total as a 5-man group in the NBA. Obviously had such a successful season at the 3 seed, but it's those starters that are killing them right now. It's Kevin Huerter and Keegan Murray. Up until game 4, Keegan Murray hadn't done anything. Kevin Huerter still hasn't done anything. Harrison Barnes is not who he was in the regular season right now. So it's like, I think they need to make a starting lineup adjustment. But at the same time, it's like, I've been rocking with these guys for 82 straight games. Like, and they've been so good. Pulling one of them feels like a disservice, but I feel like he's got to put like Davion in the starting lineup or something and just hope Kevin Huerter coming off the bench gives you a little jolt.
Yeah, I guess that would be the guy, right? If there is a guy who started making his shots and it would give me a little fear, it is Huerter, because the majority of his offense is from, threes coming off of screens. And that can be an infectious thing. Like if they see him making those shots, I think just that raises the Kings' confidence level up, because he's been doing it all season, and for this playoffs he's not making them. He's
been in big games before. He's not Mr. Butt Cheeks, the guy who I prayed on to, like, who hasn't played in big games, hasn't been in the playoffs. Like you said, it could be Keegan. You were right for 3 games, but I didn't think there was a chance it'd be Kevin Huerter. Like on that Hawks team, round 1 they beat the Knicks that one year. Round 2 they beat the 1 seed Philadelphia 76ers. I just thought that, if anyone came to play, he was going to be among the 4 of them.
I did read a stat, though, that said that series that people keep talking about or keep mentioning as his big series, it was really like one game that he just went off, and the other games were pretty pedestrian. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I didn't look deeply, and I didn't go to Basketball Reference and look at the things, but that's what someone said on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, the Huerter piece is huge for them, I think, even more so than Keegan, because Keegan is a rookie and he's going to be he's never been in those games before, so it's a little bit hard to do that as a rookie. Now, what about from the Warriors' end? Were you happy with the way that Jordan Poole played? He still got the little bit of the nagging ankle thing, but I feel like game 4 was maybe the Jordan Poole that we sort of were bargaining that was going to be that guy. Steve called him whatever he called him, the foundation or the pillar or whatever he
Foundational
called him.
6 or something.
Yeah, whatever it was. I mean, we were giving these guys nicknames last year for the Fast Five and all this stuff, and that was Jordan Poole part of that. What have you thought about his play since coming back from the ankle thing?
I mean, I was kind of very heavy on it on game 2 when it felt like the whole world was against Jordan Poole, that KOC's out here calling him one of the worst players in the league. Like, I was saying, like, dude, he's hurt. He is injured. I've never seen him play as bad as he did in game 2 in my entire life. There's no way that guy's healthy. Couple days go by, you get game 3. He had like an okay game 3, and then game 4, pretty solid game from Jordan up until he throws that stupid turnover to Malik Monk. Malik Monk just jumped out of the sky to grab that one too. That was such an athletic play by Malik.
That was another one for the butt cheek register.
Oh yeah.
Was that because so Davion Mitchell goes into the front row and he gets tangled. Like he doesn't
bounce up.
Yeah, he's like falling into the thing, and so it's a 5-on-4.
And Jordan didn't realize that one. And then when he did realize it, he frantically tried to make the play. And it was just Malik was just reading his eyes the whole time.
Yeah. And so then he sulks and he doesn't get back on defense. And Davion is just waiting on the other side for an easy bucket. So.
They need a good Jordan Poole game for game 5, though. Like, this is a big game. This is a pretty big game. I'm still confident that if the Warriors lose this thing, they can win in 7. But I think if the Warriors win this thing, it's done in 6. You can't tell me that the Sacramento Kings are going to win in Chase Center. Although, like, I was pretty hyped. Like, I feel like I was pretty, feeling good about where the Warriors' chances stood after game 4. But then again, they only won by 1. They won because Harrison Barnes missed a shot. Same could be said about game 1. The Kings won because Andrew Wiggins missed a shot, although that shot would have tied the game, I think. But, there's been a lot of games where I feel like you can say, like, okay, I said this in the previous podcast too, but like if Andrew Wiggins is 80% of himself, like the Warriors win game one, you could say that. You could probably confidently say that. Where at game two, we've mentioned that the Warriors, if Draymond Green doesn't get ejected, like the momentum was in their favor. They could have went and messed around and won game two as well. Game three, the Warriors kill them. Game four, you could say probably for the Kings side that the Kings, a couple things changed. The Kings probably lost that game more than the Warriors won it. I don't care how you spin that one. I think both teams made idiotic plays down the stretch. But yeah, I just think that, I was a little more happy feelings based on the record, based on like, okay, we just won 2 straight. Now we're going back to sack. But when you think about it, it's like, okay, we only won that game by 1 point. So,
well, how do you think Steph and Draymond think about that?
That's a good question. I think they feel the momentum, and if there is a switch to show us and to show the media and to show all your opponents, like you guys should be terrified of playing the Warriors in round 2, it's if you go and win game 5. Like we have flipped the switch, like it's here. But yeah, would you be surprised if they lost game 5? I wouldn't.
I mean, nothing is surprising about this team. Finally, there's no excuses, right? They have all of their guys. Yeah. Andrew Wiggins, we thought maybe he was going to be slow. He's been great. He's been better than he was he didn't play. What did he play? Like 40 games or whatever it was. And in half of those games, we were thinking like, oh, this dude's going to make the All-Star team. But then he got hurt and he fell off a little bit and he didn't play that well. And then the last game that he played, he kind of got back into what we thought he was going to be.
30 points.
And then he's been more that guy, maybe not as much as the scoring, but he's looked more like that guy in these 4 games. So I think that's a positive for the Warriors. He just looks like he's playoff Wiggs from last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that for the Warriors, like Wiggins has started to gel. Like it kind of felt like a seamless transition back for him. Maybe not entirely seamless, but maybe by this point it does feel a little more like everything's kind of back to normal. And if I go back to the lineup totals, I said in the last podcast, I thought that in game 3 they would start Steph, Clay, GP2, Wiggins, and Draymond because that was their best lineup up until that point. They had played 16 minutes together. They were a +6. It was their only like plus lineup for the entire up for the first 2 games. We did that podcast before Draymond gets suspended. They pulled Draymond. Looney starts. JP starts. And then you birth the new best lineup for the Warriors, which is Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney, Jordan Poole. They've played 32 minutes together, and they're a +21. All the 3 Warriors' best lineups, that one I just said, +21 with Jordan Poole instead of Draymond. Then there's a Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond, Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney. The regular starting lineup, they have played 27 minutes together, +13. And then the one where it's GP2 instead of Looney, 16 minutes, +6. The top 4 Warriors lineups in terms of filtered by minutes, so the most minutes to the least, the first 4 lineups are in the plus, which I think is really good for the Warriors. Where if you go to the Kings side, their most 2 played lineups, that starting lineup that they've rolled with all season, have played 44 minutes together, whereas the Warriors' top lineup has only played 32 minutes together, and they're a -8.
Wow.
And then you take out, then you do Harrison Barnes, Sabonis, Fox, Malik Monk, and Davion Mitchell, second most played lineup, 21 minutes, -5.
Wow. What is their plus?
Alex,
so their plus lineups are all Alex Len lineups. You're
all
saying.
Alex Len and Trey Lyles.
Well, I mean, you know what those lineups are, though.
It's the non-Steph minutes.
Yeah, it's crazy how valuable he is on the court for this team. It was like ridiculous.
I mean, the Kings. I know there was a stat. Someone did the deep dive because it felt like the Suns bench players weren't like scoring at all. It felt like it was all just KD, Devin Booker, Ayton, and CP because they were taking the majority of the shots. So someone went in and counted up all the bench totals for each team up until like game 2 or 3, I want to say, their bench totals. And the Kings were like top 3. The Suns were the worst by far, along with Memphis. And it's like the Kings bench is like a big reason why they're even in this series right now. Like Herter and Keegan were killing them like the entire series. That's why I felt like a lineup change, needs to happen. It's because their bench is, I mean, maybe the looking at it from a coaching perspective, it's like, well, I don't want to mess with the bench unit too much because they're doing well. But man, it's your starters. It's that lineup that you're playing the most that's not been the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Those numbers are interesting. The thing that signing or sign and trade, however they got KD, the thing that changed for the Warriors was they didn't lose the non-Steph minutes anymore. Signing KD, and then they were able to keep KD in when Steph was out, and then when KD was out, Steph was in. I wonder how many minus lineups they even had because they didn't lose any scoring. It probably was a little helpful that you didn't have both of those guys on. It was just one of them, and so the one of them could cook and didn't have to worry. But
if there was a minus lineup, I'd bet it was like a KD Clay lineup.
Because Clay was chucking.
All
right, so do you have a prediction for these next 2 games? Or actually, let's just talk about Game 5. Do you have a prediction for Game 5? Do the Warriors win or lose?
I'm going to side with the Warriors winning because my initial prediction was Warriors in 6. And I think it's shocking to me based off of, obviously a little overreaction after Game 2, but it's crazy how that's even in play. And the guy who commented on the last podcast too, where he was like, I think the Warriors will win the next 4 straight. And I was like, oh, that's a little lofty. I'm with you now. I'm with you.
That was big Leo, man. That was big Leo.
I'm for it.
So I think after Sunday, my initial thought was, I think they figured it out. If you take away those crappy last minute or whatever it was, that kind of made me think that, it kind of made me doubt it a little bit. But if I take away those minutes, I think, okay, there were moments where I thought that they sort of figured out situations here, especially the way that they handled Fox in the last defensive situation. That reminded me. You remember that game where I think it was Clay and Steph actually, where they bottled up James Harden, and James Harden had the last minute shot, and I think
the
they
very
got a
last
steal.
to end the series.
Yeah, they got like a steal or something.
Yeah,
that's what that deep with Draymond and Steph together. That's what that reminded me of how, like, you want Fox to take that shot 100% if you're a Kings fan, and they just didn't let him. He was like, "What? Like, how do I even attack this?" And so I kind of think maybe they saw something there that they could use. You can't use it every single time because it's just, they're going to see it, right? But maybe in certain possessions, you use Draymond as that guy who comes with the trap, and he's, Draymond's long and big, and he's not easy to throw around. So that made me think of that. And so I think it's next 2. I think they win the next 2 and they go on to play the Lakers, which I was kind of thinking Lakers or Grizzlies. And the thing that I keep circling back to is
home court advantage.
That's
crazy. Imagine the 6 seed Warriors can get home court advantage in a second round series. Don't want to jump ahead of myself, but just even the thought of a 6 seed getting home court advantage in the second round is beyond me.
Yeah, no, I think that's the way that you have to think about this now.
And that's probably the first that if that happens, I've got to assume that's the only time that's ever happened in NBA history, where a 6 seed, a 7 seed upset in the same conference, and then the opposite conference, an 8 seed could potentially upset.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. It is.
That is crazy.
All right. So I'm calling next 2. So at least next one, we're both calling victory. It is a scary prediction, just knowing what we know about this team and how many times we tried to call that. So I just want to point that out.
Totally.
All right. Last thing before we get out of here that I want to talk about. All of a sudden, this became a topic of conversation.
We've been talking about this.
Draymond,
and the video resurfaced.
Draymond Green mentioned Harrison Barnes. And so there was when did Draymond do this podcast where this soundbite
I can't remember when he had Lillard on, because that's where the podcast it was on.
Yeah.
I've got to imagine. I feel like I've known this though. So like that had to be a while ago.
Yeah. So Draymond said in that podcast, Harrison Barnes still don't like me for KD coming. He took it very personally because of the story of me crying to KD in the car. He invited everyone to his wedding except me. And Richard Jefferson even said that he got invited to the wedding. So, okay,
That's intentional.
why does this circle? Why does this? And look, hey man, what it's very possible that Draymond was like a mean guy to Harrison,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like that's the part of the story we don't know. Maybe he pushed Harrison, and Harrison's like, I'm the first round draft pick. You're the number 2 draft pick.
yeah.
But like there's feelings, and that's his wedding. Maybe his wife doesn't like Draymond. That's kind of thing, right? But I guess the reason why this thing circles back is because of the quote where Draymond and told Steph, we've seen this before. So there's something very personal between Harrison and Draymond. And I guess my question is, do you think this stuff really matters? Like, does Draymond think of this moment and is like, yeah, Harrison didn't even invite me to his wedding? Because Draymond got married too, right? Did Harrison get invited to Draymond's wedding?
I'm guessing not.
So like, he makes it about the KD thing, which it probably, I mean, I don't know if it's true or not. It could be something, from even before that Draymond's not even thinking about. But do you think like Draymond uses this for motivation to drive him? Like, because he's creating stuff out of thin air, essentially, sometimes, right? To
Yeah.
fire himself up about how to play harder. Can I play harder than I currently play? Like, do you think he really feels this way, or is it just like made up stuff?
I think the story's real. I don't think that's what's motivating him this series. I feel like it's more so the whole ejection thing is probably it's probably number one, I'd assume. Yeah. There was also a thing where Harrison Barnes turned down like a contract extension when he was eligible, and Draymond didn't like that or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this would be a really weird way to like just completely amp yourself for an entire series against this individual because he didn't invite you to his wedding that you also didn't invite him to.
But maybe it's kind of a thing where he uses it as a personal diss, and Harrison kind of doesn't. Like, Harrison, it doesn't matter to Harrison. Maybe like he's like, this Draymond just doing whatever. But to Draymond, he sees that as like, yeah, like this is why you miss these shots, right? Because you don't take this stuff personally. Like, I'm in your face telling you how I feel about you, and it's not getting you amped up. So that's why you're weak. Like, I wonder if he uses it in that way.
I feel like Draymond doesn't totally use, like, no offense to Harrison. I think I'd actually like if Harrison was on the Warriors right now, but
yeah, me too.
Yeah. I feel like Draymond doesn't use like players to motivate him who are worse than him. Like, I feel like he usually aims higher than that. And the only time he's aimed lower that I can remember in recent memory is Dylan Brooks. And Brooks was like, saying, calling him out at any time he got the chance. So there was reason for Draymond to like make a whole spiel out of that one. But this one, I don't know. This one's like, Harrison's objectively worse than Draymond Green. So I don't know. And Harrison's like a to himself guy. He's not like, I don't see it.
Supposedly just like a super nice guy as well. So it's so funny how this stuff
Did
works.
you see you saw the quotes that Amick got from Harrison, right?
No.
Did you Sam Amick sat down with HB and talked about stuff, and I think Sam just wanted to get a quote out of him for the Draymond thing. It was like after game 1, I think that story came out, and I mean Harrison didn't seem to, say anything mean about Draymond. It was more so like,
oh yeah, okay, now I know what you're talking about. Harrison just said nothing. Like
he just said like, yeah, just like maybe one day, me and Draymond and you, Sam, can be on a podcast and we'll talk it out. Like, that was it. I was like, that was there's weird. No way this is what's driving Draymond. Just like, this guy doesn't care.
HB wants the Magic and Isaiah on NBA TV where they're crying with each other. And Draymond's like, nah, bro, you come on my podcast and we'll hash it out. No Sam Amick. Did you see the Shams reporting piece in the small interview that he did with Draymond? Supposedly there was a moment in the locker room in January where he finally was, I guess, not afraid to yell at Jordan Poole and they thought that that was like finally Draymond being Draymond. And he mentioned that. He mentioned having to earn his voice back. And still, when Draymond talks about the situation, he goes, he'll say something like, the situation, or you know what we're talking about. He doesn't like own up to it, and it's really bothered me this time. But maybe that's something that has to happen in the offseason for him, to talk about it in that way. He doesn't say, yeah, when when I made a big mistake and I did something that I should have never done. Like, he doesn't say it like that. He goes, the situation that we're talking about. And so he kind of distances himself from it.
Mhm.
And it's really weird to me, like, why he does that. Because if you want that leadership role, that voice that you're talking about, you own it, right? And in Draymond, what is the new media all about? You stand on
Stand
it.
on
Like,
it.
he keeps saying you stand on it. And so I find it so weird that he doesn't take his own advice there and just own that moment so that it can go away. Now, maybe it never goes away.
Well, it's because I think he still thinks that like his reaction wasn't like that bad. I feel like I've heard him not necessarily double down, but like kind of have that mentality where like, if only you heard what he said to me that prompted that. Like, I don't think he completely is apologetic about his reaction.
He,
I think
he
he's more so apologetic that it leaked and Jordan Poole, like, people looked at him differently after seeing him get knocked out.
I wonder, yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but he's got this player option. And if there's any situation with the Warriors where he doesn't get what he wants, or they're not being responsive, or it doesn't look like the team is, coming to try and come to this agreement with him or whatever, I wonder if there's going to be more information that comes out about that, right? Because you see this a lot now. I would hope that the Warriors organization is classy enough. But let's say there's a world where Draymond doesn't come back next year. Does all of a sudden Jordan Poole's side, management side, information leak, and all of a sudden Draymond is this bad guy? When basically what they did, it seems to me, they kind of catered to him in this moment and tried to make it seem like it wasn't that big of a deal.
I feel like that potentially happens depending on how the exit goes.
Yeah.
Like, I think if the Warriors drop 2 in a row to the Kings here and Draymond decides to leave, I don't think that would happen. But I think if, say, the Warriors went on to the Western Conference Finals or the Finals, and Draymond saying, I'm going to opt out and you guys better give me like what I want because of how essential I am to this team. We just won another championship and I was the second reason why that happened. And they still don't give him that money. And then he just decides to leave out of like spite. I think then that would be like I think it depends on how he leaves if that information would come out. And that's pretty classless if it does come out regardless.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird thing for sure. All right, we're gonna keep this short because I believe we're gonna come back Wednesday night after Game 5. Probably not Friday, but there's also a Game 7 Sunday if that happens. And if somehow the series ends on Friday, maybe we'll try and record something earlier in the week next week. But so at least we'll be back Wednesday night. Possible Sunday, but I know you probably have some other podcast to record too, so we'll play that by ear. But at least Wednesday night we'll have a live recap of Game 5 very soon after the game ends. So we'll cut this one here just under 40 minutes. But yeah, so
really quick, before we sign out here, what do you think the starting lineup is for the Warriors in Game 5?
Draymond and Looney.
Okay, so they're going back to
I think so, because I mean, there may be quick substitutions, but I think setting the tone defensively is going to be a big deal
especially on the road
on Wednesday. And
okay.
Maybe the way to do that is to not be sloppy on offense, but I don't know if they can play it that way or if they think about it that way. I think they think about it as how do we make a statement with Fox and this finger, and how do we keep Herter and Murray from getting like that. That's the way that I think that they'll start it. Mostly, if you think about it, if you're Herter or Murray and you see Jordan Poole out there, you're probably kind of excited, right? Because you just know how poor he is chasing guys around. So I would hope that they would stay with their starting lineup and then focus on that and then sort of figure out the
Yeah, that's a good
scenario
point.
after that.
I would almost, yeah, I think I'd start with the starting lineup. First sub, I think for me would be GP2 for Looney, and then you get to roll out that lineup that I was
Yeah.
saying in game 2 is really good. But I think more than for the Kings, do you think it stays the same? They roll with what they've been rolling with all year. You don't
I
think
think
anything
so
switch up there?
because if you don't, then you probably lose Herter even more than you've lost him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think something needs to happen in the starting lineup. Like if they roll out the same lineup and there still seems to be shooting woes in the first quarter, I think it's over.
Well, you could do that, and you would line up Mitchell's minutes with Steph, right?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, Mitchell's been pretty solid on Steph too.
Yeah,
Just in
he's
terms of
been
like
good.
matchup numbers, he's been okay, as good as you can be for someone on the Kings. All right.
All right, we will be back tomorrow night after Warriors Kings Game 5 for Brian Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.